Hi guys, this is Mitch here at Motion Raceworks, here to show you how to install our new 4th gen Camaro Dzus rails. Alright guys, what we have here is our Dzus rail kit. It's actually two different kits depending on what you're going to build. These here are the side rails that will go the length of the fender. And then with that you're going to get 10 M6 bolts, some washers that just go on the bolt. And then you got the 10 little spacers, 2 bigger spacers, and 2 nuts for those spacers. I'll show you where those go in a minute. And then if you're gonna have the factory front clip or the supports, you'll want the front mounts also. There's 2 of them, they're just mirrored. And then you got the 4 bolts, nuts and washers to put those in. To put it in, you're just gonna need a few basic hand tools. Obviously I got a gun to speed some things up. The front kit is just 2 17mm wrenches. A shorter wrench would be helpful. Don't have any here right now, but just because it's kind of some tight spaces. And then for the other side kit, you need a 10mm socket or wrench, and that's to take the factory bolts out of the car. Then you need a 5mm Allen, that's to put the new bolts in. And then you'll also want, I forgot about these, the pliers and screwdriver are to take when you put the front kit on. You'll have some plastic clips that you want to take out, and that's what those are for. So the first thing we're going to do is take our 10mm and 13mm socket, and we're going to go take the factory bolts out of the fenders. Now these bolts, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 10mm head bolts, and then back here the 2 bigger studs, that's where your factory hood hinges will mount. And what I've got now is I've got the front bolt just on because we're not going to use that, and then the back one, the nut is still left off because a spacer and nut is going to go on there for the rearmost mount on the Dzus rail. Just get your gun and zip all these off. You might have a little problem. These wires like to get in the way a little bit, but if you need to, you can unclip them, pull them off their trees, and get them out of the way. And now we want to grab the Dzus rail. That is the passenger side one, with the short leg all the way at the front. And it's got the one you can start with back here to kind of line up. And this is where we'll have to get our spacers, but you can see right now that it keeps going straight out. You're gonna have to tweak this part to fit your curve as you bolt it in. We'll get the bolts and spacers. Got all my spacers here, my one big one and the nut, and then the 5 bolts. So we'll start at the back, put the spacer on the stud. Slide the Dzus rail on, and just start to finger snug it up for now. It doesn't grab very well with the nut on this back one, but it is a serrated nut, so it should dig in once you snug it all down. Now we just start working our way down the line. Grab a little spacer. This can be a bit of a trick. Find your factory hole, and there's one started. And you can also see on these, there's quite the slot on the rail, and that's going to be just for adjusting it up and down depending on where your fenders line up, maybe, I don't know if you have aftermarket fenders, or especially different thicknesses in aftermarket hoods. And when you're putting it together, obviously each bolt just gets a little washer on it so it doesn't eat into the aluminum as hard. And then you just put the spacer behind it. Again, the tricky part, getting the bolt through the spacer. And then you just go down to, again, your factory bolt hole, if you can find it. There we are. Okay, now and on the last two, I'm starting to get to where, to get it down all the way, you're gonna want to start to put a little bend in it. Not much, just enough to get the bolts lined up. And maybe another bend on the front one. Another one in there. Okay. Last bolt. Get all our old hardware out of the way. Grab our Allen. Obviously right now I'm just eyeballing it with the top of the fender. Depending on the thickness of your hood, you'd eyeball it with that line and down, or some tweaking with your hood on once you have the Dzuses made too. To get it lined up with your fender. And then just go along and snug it up. Grab my 13mm wrench. Impact. And there. One side's done. And then just repeat for the other. All right, guys, and now for the front one. Again, actually this is the part, if you haven't cut out your core support and are still using the factory front plastics and bumper support, that's when you're gonna want these. What you're gonna wanna do first is, obviously you can see these are already out, so you'll need to take this clip out. There's normally 4 more right here, but this car didn't have them. There is a special tool you can get to shimmy under and get them out. But if you don't have that tool, you can work at it with a screwdriver, and a lot of times doing it this way will get it pretty screwed up, but we're going to replace it with bolts in this case, so not as big of a deal. Oh, that actually came right out. And then you just got your clip pulled out, and that'll get replaced with bolts. But we'll put the center one back in because that actually stays. Now on to actually putting the Dzus rails on. What you got here is, it's gonna go on right over the holes, and you'll want the one that's got the Dzus mount right over the hole mount is what's gonna go on the outside on each one. So then it gets your Dzuses out closer to your headlights, and it gives you also a nice even gap between all 4 of them. All right, and now, what can be a little bit of the tricky part is this one that you will see put in from the bottom or top down. Fish your hand up under the bumper support. The other one will not clear. You gotta come up from this way, but once the Dzus is on, it'll be hidden by the Dzus anyways. Well, like I said earlier, this is definitely where a short 17mm would help. And there's one. And then the only other real tweaking is, once you get your hood on, the Dzus is again in here, and these rails, you can just tweak up to match perfectly with your hood, depending on what kind of cowl you have and how it fits there. And that is how to install Motion Raceworks 4th Gen Dzus rails.